My son took me deep into the wild forests of Alaska, then left me there with no food, no tent, no gear. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Bye, go meet the grizzly." He wanted me gone, dead, so he could take my inheritance. But when he came home, thinking I was lost forever, I was already waiting for him with a smile on my face, and that's when I told him, "I have a surprise for you." I still remember the sound of the front door slamming open that night. It was the kind of sound that doesn't just startle you, it rattles your bones, leaves your heart skipping. Rain was falling in sheets outside, the Seattle drizzle soaking everything gray and heavy. Mason stormed through the doorway, his hoodie dripping, sneakers squeaking against my hardwood floor like angry punctuation marks. His face was twisted, jaw clenched, and before I could even get a word out, he barked, "Dad, I need 5,000. Right now." I froze at my desk, pen still in hand. I'd been reviewing invoices for one of the auto shops, grease still caked under my fingernails from earlier that day. But his voice, it wasn't my son's voice. It was sharp, aggressive, like a man cornering someone who owed him. "Mason, what?" I managed. 5,000. Tonight. He wasn't asking, he was commanding. My stomach tightened. Just last week, I had transferred him his monthly allowance. $3,000. More than most people his age even dream of getting from their parents. "I already sent your monthly," I said carefully. $3,000. He scoffed, pacing back and forth in the living room, fists clenched. "The $3,000 barely covers my rent. You think that's enough? You think that covers everything?" His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from rage. And in that moment, I didn't see my boy. I saw a man full of resentment, full of entitlement, his anger directed at the one person who had given up everything for him. I leaned back, my flannel shirt suddenly feeling tight around the chest. My mind flashed back to the years after Sarah died. My wife, his mother, the long nights building those shops from nothing. 18-hour days, eating canned soup in the back office, hands blistered and raw. Also Mason could have a future better than mine. "Son," I said quietly, steady in my voice, "we've talked about this. You need to find steady work. Something that gives you work." Mason spun on his heels, face flushed red, eyes blazing. "Why should I work when you're sitting on all this money? When you control everything like some dictator?" His words hit harder than a fist. I straightened my shoulders instinctively, military posture kicking in, as if bracing against fire. "I'm trying to teach you responsibility," I said. He laughed then, a bitter, cruel sound. "Responsibility? You want to know about responsibility? After you die, I'll be an amazing master of your auto shops. I'll run them better than you ever did." The words hung there, cold, sharp, poison. My chest tightened so hard I thought I'd collapse right there. My own son, talking about my death like it was nothing, like it was just the next step in his business plan. I opened my mouth, but no words came. For 20 years I had raised him alone. 20 years of scraped knuckles, sleepless nights, and quiet prayers. I had believed that one day, Mason would grow into the kind of man Sarah would have been proud of. But standing there, hearing him talk so casually about me dying, all of that hope crumbled to ash. Mason must have seen the look on my face, the shock he'd revealed too much. His expression shifted in an instant, from arrogance to panic. Without another word, he turned for the door. The slam echoed like a gunshot. The family photo on the mantel rattled, Sarah's smiling face trembling behind the glass. I stood frozen, pen still white-knuckled in my hand, listening to his car engine roar to life outside. As the sound faded into the night, I stared at that photo. Sarah holding an 8-year-old Mason at his Little League game, both of them grinning. The frame settled back into silence, but the tremble in my chest did not. The next morning, I reached up and straightened the photo. Sarah's eyes, radiant and young, looked back at me. For the first time, I felt her smile as an accusation. Memories hit me like body blows. Sarah's funeral when I nearly collapsed but promised her dying breath that I'd take care of Mason. The mortgage on the first auto shop already 3 months behind, while medical bills drained every cent we had. Private school tuition, $40,000 a year, because I swore Sarah's son would have the best. The Honda Civic I bought him at graduation, $18,000 in cash, because he sneered at anything used. Page after page of old photo albums told the same story. Birthdays with expensive gifts, every setback solved with my wallet. And always that look in Mason's eyes, like something was missing. While other kids his age bagged groceries or flipped burgers in summer, Mason sat home gaming. Living off monthly allowances I convinced myself were investments in his future. But looking back, the progression was clear. Every bailout, every gift, every rescue had chipped away at his character. I thought I was being a good father. Instead, I had raised a stranger who now looked at my death as a paycheck. That night, I sat in Sarah's old chair, the one I never had the heart to remove, and whispered into the silence, "I failed you, Sarah." The truth settled in my bones, like the winter cold creeping under a door. I hadn't raised a man. I had raised a parasite, and I knew something had to change. The phone rang 3 nights later. I almost didn't answer it. Mason's name lit up the screen, glowing in the dark like some kind of warning. My hand hovered. Part of me wanted to hit decline and let it die there in silence. Another part of me, the part that still wanted to believe my son was salvageable, picked it up. "Hello, son," I said cautiously. "Dad, hey, how are you doing?" The cheerfulness in his voice was wrong. Too bright, too rehearsed. It was the same tone a salesman uses when he's about to sell you something you don't need. "I'm fine," I said flatly. "Unexpected to hear from you so soon after our last conversation." "Yeah, about that," Mason rushed, words tumbling too fast. "Listen, I was way out of line. I shouldn't have said what I said. I was frustrated, and I want to make it right." My instincts flared. It was too smooth, too convenient. Mason had never been quick to apologize before. He let grudges fester like infections. "So why this sudden eagerness? What are you proposing?" I asked, letting silence stretch. Military discipline had taught me long ago. The less you say, the more truth others reveal. He swallowed audibly. "Let's go camping. Together, Alaska. Just you and me. Like when I was a kid, remember Denali? The firewood, the tracks you showed me, how you could start a flame even when everything was wet. You used to say the wilderness shows a man's true character." His words tugged at me. Memories I hadn't let surface in years flickered alive. Mason at 12, his small hands clutching a stick, Sarah laughing as I taught him to tie knots. Back then, before grief, before entitlement, there was still a boy in him, but Mason hadn't shown interest in camping since high school. The sudden nostalgia felt planted, like bait. "This is very sudden," I said slowly. I know, but here's the thing, my buddies canceled on me last minute. I've already got the flights, the permits, the gear, everything's paid for. It all expires tomorrow if we don't use it. Feels like a sign, right? Like fate's telling us to patch things up. My grip on the phone tightened. The urgency in his voice wasn't excitement, it was pressure. Manufactured. He didn't want me to think too carefully, just to agree. "When have you ever organized a camping trip, Mason?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Come on, Dad," he said quickly. "Remember when you taught me to read animal tracks? When you showed me how to fish in the cold streams? Those are some of my best memories. I've been thinking, maybe what we need is to strip away the city noise, the stress, the fights, and just reconnect. Just father and son, out there in God's country." The sincerity in his tone twisted me in two directions at once. On one hand, my gut screamed warnings. The timing, the story about his friends, the way he emphasized no distractions. It all smelled rotten. On the other hand, beneath suspicion lay something more dangerous. Hope. Hope that my son wasn't gone. Hope that there was still love inside him, buried under resentment and greed. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Sarah hadn't died for me to raise a monster. "The flights leave March 25th, Mason pressed. "Seattle to Anchorage. Then we drive to the park. 5 days, Dad. Just 5 days in the wilderness. Like the old times. 5 days, I repeated, my voice tight. "Dad, please, this might be our last chance to fix what's broken between us." Those words, last chance, they cut straight to the heart of every fear I'd been carrying. The silence stretched long. My eyes drifted to the desk in front of me. Legal documents ID, begun drafting after our last fight. Precautions against possibilities I had prayed would never materialize. I thought of Sarah's face in that photo on the mantle, the weight of my promise to protect him, and how badly I'd already failed her. "All right," I heard myself say, against every instinct, screaming inside me, "let's do it." Mason exhaled sharply, too relieved. "Really? That's fantastic. I'll text you the flight details. Meet me at SeaTac departure gate, day after tomorrow. We'll make it a trip we'll never forget." We hung up. I sat there in the silence, my heart hammering. A trip we'll never forget. The words felt like prophecy. But Mason wasn't the only one planning. Because while he thought he was leading me into the wilderness for my death, I had already begun laying the groundwork for something else. Something he never expected. That night, I called Oliver, an old acquaintance from my military days turned wilderness survival expert. A man who knew Alaska like the back of his hand, and who understood the darker side of human nature. We spoke for over an hour. When I hung up, the plan was already in motion. Hope for reconciliation. Prepare for betrayal. Either way, Mason was about to discover I was much harder to kill than he thought. Alaska greeted us with teeth. The air that hit my lungs, stepping out of the rental truck, was just cold. It was alive, sharp, hungry, unrelenting. The kind of air that reminds you immediately, you don't belong here. We parked near the edge of Denali National Park. Snow lay thick on the earth, muffling sound, and the forest stretched out like an endless wall of shadow. No neighbors, no cabins, just miles and miles of wilderness. Mason clapped his gloved hands together. "Man, isn't this great, Dad? Fresh air, no noise, no traffic." His voice carried that artificial brightness again, the same salesman tone. I adjusted the pack on my shoulders, heavier than his, noticeably so. He'd insisted on divvying up supplies before we left Seattle. "You're stronger than me, Dad," he'd said with a grin. "You can handle the load." I hadn't argued. Sometimes it's better to let a man think he's playing you when in truth, you're measuring him. We set out along a narrow trail. Snow crunched beneath our boots, every step echoing like a drumbeat in the silence. For the first few miles, we talked. Or rather, Mason talked. He reminisced about childhood memories. The fishing trip where he'd fallen in the river. The time he cried when I made him gut his first trout. The long nights when Sarah would sing while I built the fire. His voice had the polish of a man rehearsing lines, not reliving them. He was painting nostalgia like camouflage, trying to cover something darker. By dusk, we set up camp in a small clearing. Mason insisted I take the tent while he slept outside in a bivy sack. "I'll be fine. Dad, you need more rest than me." I lay inside the nylon walls, listening to the fire pop, and forced myself to breathe evenly, but I didn't sleep. Every instinct told me this wasn't reconciliation. This was staging. On the third day, the betrayal came. We had trekked deeper into the park, miles from the road, far from any ranger station. The silence was immense, broken only by the distant croak of ravens and the wind combing through the trees. That morning, Mason had been unusually chipper. To chipper, he whistled while we hiked, a grating tune that didn't belong in the wilderness. Around noon, we reached a ridge that looked out over a valley of frozen pines. The landscape was brutal, breathtaking. Mason dropped his pack, stretching. "Let's take a break," he said, handing me a water flask. "You've been carrying the heavy load. You deserve it." Something about the way he said it, the ease, the almost affectionate tone, froze me colder than the wind. I unscrewed the cap, sniffed, nothing unusual. I didn't drink. Instead, I asked casually, "So, what happens after this trip, Mason?" He smiled, but it wasn't warmth. It was a private joke. "Well, Dad, I guess that depends on you." Before I could respond, he stood, brushed snow from his jacket, and slung his lighter pack across his shoulder. Then, with a smirk that twisted my stomach, he said 5 words that cut deeper than any knife. "Bye, go meet the grizzly." He turned, and just like that, my only son began walking away. At first, I hoped, it was a cruel joke, that he'd walk 10 yards, spin back around, laugh and say, "Gotcha." But Mason didn't stop. His footsteps crunched farther and farther down the ridge, until the trees swallowed him. I shouted his name once. The sound bounced off the valley, hollow, no answer. That was when I opened my pack. Empty. No food. New stove. New compass. Not even a flare. He de-stripped everything from my gear but a single blanket and a small hatchet. Tools enough to prolong my suffering. Not enough to guarantee survival. The water flask in my hand suddenly felt heavier. Poisoned. Maybe he just wanted me to waste precious hours, debating whether to risk drinking it. The realization settled like a stone in my gut. Mason had brought me here to die, alone, unarmed, and far, far from help. The silence pressed in. Every shadow seemed alive. I thought of Sarah, her smile, her laugh, the way she used to rest her hand on Mason's shoulder when he was small. I thought of the boy he used to be, and the man who had just condemned me. For a long minute, I sat on the ridge, staring at the empty trail. The wilderness seemed to lean closer, waiting for me to break, but I didn't. I stood. I tightened the straps of the useless pack, and I whispered aloud, to the trees, to Sarah, to myself. "You picked the wrong man to leave behind, Mason, because what my son didn't understand, what he never understood, was that survival isn't a matter of luck, it's a matter of will." I'd lived through war zones, through storms at sea, through nights colder than this when I was half his age and twice as foolish. I'd buried comrades. I'd buried a wife, and I had learned one truth above all others. You don't stop walking. So I didn't. That night, I built a fire using bark, resin, and the little hatchet he'd left me. My fingers bled from the cold. My throat screamed for water, but flame finally caught. The forest lit up an orange glow, shadows leaping like demons across the snow. And as I huddled near the fire, I swore a silent vow. If the wilderness didn't kill me, I would walk back into civilization. And when I did, Mason would see a father, not just alive, but changed. A father who would no longer beg for love. A father who would make his son face the weight of every betrayal. The night my son left me to die, the fire I built wasn't just heat, it was defiance. Every crackle was a reminder. I am still here. The wind howled through the trees, carrying the groan of bending trunks, and the occasional eerie cry of something unseen. Out here, darkness isn't just the absence of light. It's a predator, circling, pressing, whispering doubts. I sat with the hatchet clutched in my hand, Sarah's face glowing in my mind. If not for her memory, maybe I'd have let the cold swallow me. But love, even from the dead, is a fierce kind of fuel. When dawn came, pale and merciless, I knew what I had to do. Keep moving. The first problem was water. Without it, I wouldn't last 3 days. Mason had taken the filters, the iodine tablets, everything. But he'd underestimated me. I followed a slope downhill, listening. Nature speaks, if you're quiet enough. Around midday, I heard it, the faint trickle of water under snow. I scraped with numb hands, and there it was, a thin stream threading between rocks. I cupped my hands and drank. It tasted like ice and earth. Maybe it carried parasites, maybe it didn't. Didn't matter. In that moment, it was life. The second problem was food. Hunger gnawed quick. My body wanted fuel I didn't have. But I'd been a Boy Scout once. I remembered what could kill me and what wouldn't. I scraped lichen off a rock, chewed it bitterly. I found frozen berries, spit half of them out when my tongue warned they were wrong. By nightfall, my stomach was empty, but my will was not. The third night, the bear came. I woke to the crunch of snow outside my makeshift fire pit. A massive shadow lumbered between the trees, a grizzly drawn by the faint smell of smoke and whatever scraps of lichen clung to my clothes. It stopped 20 feet away, rising on its hind legs, a dark mountain against the stars. My heart slammed against my ribs. Mason's words rang in my head. Go meet the grizzly. Not yet, son, not yet. I grabbed a burning branch from the fire, waved it, shouted. My voice tore at the night, raw and primal. The beast swayed, sniffed, and finally turned, crashing back into the trees. Only when the sound faded did I collapse to my knees, breath shaking, eyes wet. The wilderness was testing me. Every hour, every moment. But I was passing, days blurred. I walked until my legs screamed, rested when the cold forced me, then walked again. Each sunrise was a victory. Each fire was a declaration. The strangest thing happened around the 6th day. I stopped feeling abandoned. Yes, Mason had left me. Yes, his betrayal cut deeper than any wound. But out there, it wasn't him I thought about most. It was Sarah, her laugh, her kindness, the way she used to squeeze my hand when Mason was little and stubborn. Out there, her presence was stronger than it had been in years. I realized something that shook me. Mason thought he'd left me to die, but in truth, he had given me back my purpose. Not vengeance, not even survival. Something purer. Resolve. I was no longer a man waiting for scraps of affection from his son. I was a man who belonged to himself again. And once I understood that, I stopped fearing the wilderness. On the 10th day, I stumbled onto a snow-packed trail. Tire tracks half buried, but human-made. Civilization's fingerprint. I followed it, step by step, until at dusk, a ranger's truck appeared on the horizon, headlights carving through the white. When the ranger jumped out, eyes wide at the sight of me. Ragged, hollow-eyed, wrapped in a shredded blanket. I managed a smile. Need a lift? He asked. I laughed. My voice cracked like dry wood. Yeah, I said. I think my son forgot me out here. He didn't ask questions. He just helped me into the cab, cranked the heater, and handed me a thermos of coffee. The warmth hit my veins like fire. My hands shook so badly I spilled half of it on my lap, but I didn't care, because I was alive. When I finally looked at myself in a mirror, a ranger station bathroom, yellow light buzzing overhead, I barely recognized the man staring back. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, beard thick with frost-burnt streaks. But behind all that, strength. Not the fragile strength Mason thought he'd stolen. Not the strength of a man who sacrifices everything for family and gets nothing in return. This was something harder, sharper. The strength of a man who had looked death in the face and kept walking. As I splashed water on my face, I whispered to my reflection, Mason, you wanted me gone, but all you did was forge me into something you can't control. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not the smile of a father begging to be loved. The smile of a man who was about to take back everything that was his. When I walked back into civilization, I wasn't the same man who'd left. I'd gone into the woods a father begging for his son's approval. I came out a survivor who owed nothing to anyone. But Mason didn't know that. To him, I was still the old man, the one who'd worked himself raw to provide, who'd paid for his college, his wedding, his first down payment on that polished suburban home. The father who had sacrificed his dreams so Mason could have his. He thought I'd never stop giving, never push back. He was wrong. The ranger dropped me off near the bus depot. I bought a ticket into town, cleaned myself up, and by the time I got back home, I looked like I'd just come from a long hunting trip, a little thinner, a little rougher, but alive. Alive enough to knock on Mason's door that very evening. The look on his face when he opened it, worth every frozen mile. His eyes went wide, his jaw slackened. Behind him, I saw his wife, Amber, clutching a wine glass, confusion spreading across her face. Dad, Mason stammered. You're alive, I finished, my voice calm, almost amused. Surprise, Amber stepped forward. Mason, what's going on? You said she stopped, caught herself. I didn't need her to finish. I already knew what he'd told her. I smiled, slow and deliberate. May I come in? Or should I just wait for the police to arrive when I tell them what happened up there? His face drained of color. He stepped aside. Inside, their home was warm, cozy, decorated with the kind of modern taste money buys my money, if we're being precise. I lowered myself onto their pristine sofa like I owned the place. Maybe I did. Mason hovered, restless, while Amber set her glass down, eyes darting between us. Mason, what's he talking about? She whispered. He didn't answer. So, I did. Your husband left me in the Alaskan wilderness with no food, no gear, nothing but my hands. He wanted me dead. He wanted the inheritance early. Amber gasped, covering her mouth. Mason, tell me that isn't true. Mason's lips parted, then shut. His silence was louder than any confession. I leaned back, folding my hands. You didn't plan on me walking back through that door, did you, son? His eyes burned, not with guilt, but with anger. Like a child caught stealing, furious not at the crime, but at being exposed. That's when I laid out my cards. I've been thinking, Mason, about everything I've given you, the tuition, the house, the business loans, the inheritance you couldn't wait for, and I realized I've made a terrible mistake. His fists clenched. What mistake? Letting you believe my love was unconditional. Amber whispered, oh my God. As the pieces fell into place, I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. I've spoken with my lawyer. The will is changing. Every cent, every asset is being redirected. Mason paled. You can't. Oh, I can, and I have. The trust is frozen. The business shares. Pulled. The house you live in. Paid for by me, and I can pull that rug out anytime I like. Amber turned to him, her face etched with shock. Mason, is this why you... He didn't answer. Couldn't I let the silence stretch, the weight of truth filling every corner of that beautiful room? But here's the thing. Revenge isn't about shouting. It's not about throwing punches or screaming curses. Revenge is quiet, precise, surgical. So I stood, adjusted my jacket, and looked Mason in the eye. You thought leaving me in the wilderness would finish me, but you only gave me clarity. From this day forward, Mason, you get nothing. No inheritance, no support, no safety net. You wanted me dead? Fine, consider me gone. From your life, from your future. All you'll have left is the knowledge that I was stronger than you ever imagined. Amber's voice shook. Mason, is this true? Did you actually leave him out there? Mason snapped. Don't look at me like that. He's exaggerating. I cut him off. The ranger who found me has a statement. The survival logs. My own medical report. All of it will hold up in court. Don't test me. His mouth slammed shut. I turned toward. Amber, you married a man who doesn't just betray strangers. Amber, he betrays blood. One day, when it suits him, don't doubt he'll do the same to you. Her face crumpled. I headed for the door, pausing only once to glance back. Mason stood frozen, red-faced, torn between rage and fear. I spoke softly, almost like a father again. You thought you'd inherit my life's work, Mason. But all you've inherited is my contempt. Enjoy it. It's the only thing I'll ever give you again. And with that, I walked out. That night, as I sat in my own modest home, the place Mason never visited unless he needed a check, I felt no sadness, no grief, only peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't shackled by guilt or obligation. Mason had freed me in the cruelest way possible, and I intended to use that freedom. Because while he thought the story was over, he didn't realize. This was only the beginning of mine. I expected anger. I expected late-night calls, threats, maybe even begging. But what I didn't expect was silence. Mason vanished. No visits, no emails, not even a text. At first, I thought maybe he was licking his wounds. Maybe Amber had left him. Maybe he was too ashamed to face me. But then, the news came. It started with a call from my lawyer. Dennis, he said, his tone oddly grim. Did you know Mason's been trying to access your accounts? I felt my stomach tighten. What? He sighed. He's desperate. He's been calling every bank, every broker, pretending you authorized withdrawals. But since you put everything under lock and trust, he's getting nowhere. Still, it paints a very clear picture. What picture is that? That your son is drowning. Financially, maybe otherwise. I hung up the phone and sat in silence. Drowning. For years, I had been the lifeline. I paid for everything. Tuition, weddings, houses, emergencies. He never learned to swim because he always knew I'd be there to hold him afloat. Now, he was thrashing in open water. And I wasn't throwing him a rope. 2 weeks later, Amber showed up at my door. Her eyes were swollen, her voice trembling. She clutched her purse like it was the only thing she had left in the world. Mr. Hayes, she whispered. I didn't know where else to go. I let her in, made her tea, sat her down, and she told me everything. The moment Mason realized I had cut him off, he spiraled. He tried to pull loans in my name. Tried to sell off shares he no longer owned. When that failed, he turned on Amber, blaming her for not siding with him, for not pressuring me. He's not the man I married, she sobbed. Or maybe he is, and I just didn't see it until now. I placed a steady hand on the table. Amber, listen to me. Mason made his choices. He thought blood was something he could spend. He thought love was a bank account he could drain. You're not to blame for that. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then she whispered, he's gone, Dennis. He left last night. took the last of our savings and disappeared. I don't know if he's coming back. For a long while, I just sat there. My son, my only son, the boy I had raised, carried on my shoulders, worked my hands to the bone, for had finally burned every bridge. And you'd think I would feel grief, loss, something, but what I felt was nothing. He had buried himself. I'd simply stopped digging him out. Months passed. I poured myself into things I'd neglected for decades. I repaired my old cabin, picked up fishing again, volunteered at the local survival school, teaching young men and women how to respect the wilderness, how to endure, how to fight with their minds before their fists. I laughed more, slept deeper, ate better. Without Mason draining me, I found myself alive again. And then, one spring morning, I received a letter. No return address. The handwriting, shaky, desperate. It was Mason. Dad, it began. I know I don't deserve anything. Not your forgiveness. Not your money. Not even your attention. But I can't run anymore. Everything's gone. Amber's gone. I'm sleeping in my car. I don't know who I am without you. I'm sorry. I read it twice. 3 times. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. I sat down at my desk, pulled out a pen, and wrote back. Mason, I'm glad you're still alive. That's more than you wished for me when you left me in the forest. You ask who you are, without me. That's not for me to answer. That's for you to discover. I will not send money. I will not open my door. I will not be your crutch anymore. But if you are serious about changing, if you truly want to build a life that isn't carved from someone else's sacrifices, then stand up, work, sweat, learn what it means to live without taking. That's all I have left to give you. My words, my truth. The rest is up to you. Dad, I sealed the letter and sent it. I don't know if he read it. I don't know if he cursed my name, or if he folded it carefully and kept it as a reminder. What I do know is this. My story with Mason ended in that forest. The night he abandoned me was the night I buried my role as his savior. What came after was not revenge. It was justice. It was balance. And in a way, it was mercy, because I left him with the only thing he never gave me, the chance to change. So when people ask me if I regret cutting him off, I smile. Regret? No. I survived the wild. I survived my son. And now, finally, I am free. So, what do you think? If your own child betrayed you for money, would you do the same? Would you cut them off? Or keep trying to save them? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.